Moving on to part 5. What is sin? I got the puppy up in my lap now, since they were barking and she wouldn't be quiet. We can explore what changed in Adam and Eve's lives for clues. When Adam and Eve sinned, they became double-minded, developing a sort of split personality. James 1:8. They were still drawn to God, but something was wrong. Something separated them from Him that had not been present before eating the fruit. What entered into Adam and Eve that had not been there before they sinned? What entered into their lives that God did not create in them? They showed doubt, doubting God's word, unbelief, not believing God's word, and rebellion, disobeying or rebelling against God's word. Satan lied to Eve, telling her that she would not die, but rather she would be a god like her father, able to discern both good and evil. This new mindset created double-mindedness, something or sometimes believing God and other times believing Satan. What was the first thing Adam and Eve did after they sinned? They discovered their nakedness and became ashamed. So they took leaves and covered themselves. Then they hid from God because they sinned, or before they sinned. God would walk and talk with Adam in the cool of the evening, just like we talk to each other. Genesis 3:8. After sinning, Adam was afraid of God. Satan wins a victory when we become afraid of God so that we hide from Him. Adam and Eve experienced condemnation for the first time. How many of us have had to fight off condemnation after we have sinned? Romans 8:1 says that if we are following after the Spirit of God, there is no condemnation. Condemnation comes from believing the devil instead of Jesus Christ. Adam and Eve felt shame. They had been created naked, but now felt unclean and had to put on clothes. What did Adam do when God asked, "Why did you do this?" Adam said, "The woman whom thou gavest it to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat." Genesis 3:12. Adam refused to take personal responsibility, adding to his sin. The first man quickly learned to blame others and his wife. He had a good teacher who taught us the same behavior. Or we had a good teacher who taught us the same behavior. We often blame others even when we know that we're at fault. To become the spiritual leaders of our homes means taking responsibility for our actions. The garden is also the first incident where man blamed God for what went wrong. Adam implied that his sin was God's fault. God gave the woman to him. He reasoned that if God had not given him the woman, the sin would not have happened. When we blame God, we are trying to rid ourselves from all responsibility and accountability. The truth was that Adam used his free will to choose to obey God. Each of us does the same thing when we sin. We should not blame others. We should accept the responsibility and be accountable for our actions. Some of the most powerful principalities and powers of the devil show up in the behavior of Adam and Eve after they sinned. We are lying, shame, or we see lying, shame, condemnation, doubt, false accusations, and unbelief. For the first time, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and pride of life are evident. Genesis 3:6, 1 John 2:15-17. These are the same root problems that Christians still fight today. This was just the start of what Adam's sin allowed Satan to bring into this world. Eve gave birth to Cain and Abel. Years later, Cain killed Abel. The first murder. Why? God regarded Abel's sacrifice as more excellent than Cain's. Cain's soul, filled with bitterness and jealousy, driving him to commit murder. Hebrews 11:4 and Genesis 4:8. God did not reject Cain. He rejected his sacrifice. God required a blood sacrifice as a sin offering, and the best animal was to be sacrificed. Cain chose instead to bring crops from his field. God demonstrated this act of sacrifice himself when he killed an animal to provide clothing for Adam and Eve. Cain perceived God's reaction to his sacrifice as a personal rejection. It was a lie from Satan, and he meditated on it. Satan's evil nature started to bubble inside him, and Cain might have said, "I hate Abel. I wish I could just get even with him." Jealousy, resentment, unforgiveness, hatred, violence, and murder rose up within Cain, all elements of bitterness. Overwhelmed by them, he killed his brother.